Well, hello everyone. It is great to see you today. I am so excited to be studying the Bible with you today. Thank you so much for joining me and allowing me to come into your home. This is your online Bible study, Living Power. We are walking through the Bible in a year, and tomorrow is our last day in the book of Job. So we will be starting to summarize today, and tomorrow we're going to wrap everything up in this wonderful and magnificent book. My prayer for you through this study as we've been looking at Job is that you would really come to see the book of Job as you've never before seen it. And I know that it has truly been a blessing to me. I'm seeing things this time that I have never seen before. I want to thank you for your comments over the past couple of days and the past week. You are replying to each other's comments, giving each other encouragement, and that is how we create community in an online class. So I want to thank you so much if you've reached out to someone else. You truly are a blessing to many people in the class. Thank you so much for doing that. Also, many of you are telling your friends about us, and I want to thank you for that. We are growing consistently each and every day. I will continue to give you an update as far as our growth numbers. That is not the most important thing, however, to me. The most important thing to me through this class is that we learn to be consistent in our daily devotion and that we learn to become friends, true personal friends of God, each and every one of us. So I pray for you every day. I covet your prayers. Thank you so much for praying for me. I can feel your prayers giving me strength as I study and as I prepare to bring you the lessons each day. Okay, today is January 30th, and over the last couple of days, we have been introduced to a new character in the book of Job, Elihu. Elihu is evidently a fourth friend that has been with Job and the friends the whole time, but he's not said anything up until now. He's been very quiet. So this is he's begun to speak over the past couple of days, and we got to learn just a little bit about him. Now today is exciting because today we're going to hear from God himself. And our verse today is Job 38 verse 1. Then the Lord answered Job in the storm. And I've entitled the lesson today, Counting the Clouds, for two reasons. The first is I want us to talk about the importance and the meaning of God coming in a whirlwind. And secondly, I'm going to end the lesson today with a very interesting couple facts about snow and the intricacy and detail in the creation of simple snow that God brings to the earth. So today we're going to count the clouds. Okay, as we start the study today, we see that the Lord answers Job from the whirlwind. Now, if you didn't notice at the end of yesterday's reading, in chapter 37, verse probably 14 to the end of that chapter, we see Elihu starting to talk about lightning and a storm. And it gives us the impression that as they're sitting there outside, it was very common in the Middle East, and it even is today, for a storm to come up suddenly. Then oftentimes they saw lightning first as it was approaching them. So it could be that as Elihu was giving his commentary, that they were starting to see this storm coming in the distance. And then the storm is actually the Lord. The Lord is coming in this storm. Now, God comes in a storm into our lives, and he speaks to us very strongly sometimes through the troubles that we have in this world. Sometimes God comes in the sunshine. Sometimes he speaks to us through prosperity and times of blessing. It really just depends on our susceptibility to hear him. Do we hear him stronger in trouble, or do we hear him stronger in prosperity? The storm, the whirlwind, we can understand is a majestic demonstration of God's presence. And the reason he chose the storm to come to Job and to speak to Job is because he wanted to silence Job get him to quit talking, get him to quit thinking about his situation so that he was in a place to be able to hear what God was going to say to him. A whirlwind typically signifies judgment, and we learned that in Psalm 50, verse 3. So as God comes before Job, he wants him to be in a receptive place to hear what God has to say. And perhaps God is going to bring judgment. He is. He's going to bring judgment, either in condemnation or in mercy and forgiveness. Let's see what happens. Now, why did Job need to be silenced? It's very important for us to understand. All along, he's been saying, I have not sinned against God. He's not been claiming that he is perfect. Being blameless and sinless are two totally different things, but he has not sinned against the Lord. However, there is one complaint that God has against Job, and that is his attitude. It's his loftiness. It's that he had a great deal of pride in his heart. You know, that's the sin that we saw in the New Testament, the Pharisees having, is it that because they knew so much about the Bible and they had such a great knowledge and they thought they knew so much about the Lord, it made them proud. Well, God hates a proud heart, and this is one of the reasons God wants to silence Job. Notice also that in the first part of the book of Job, a whirlwind kills the children. So a whirlwind can bring devastation, but here in this case, the whirlwind is bringing revelation to Job. So it's because of his response. He is submissive, and the whirlwind is bringing revelation. When we're proud, sometimes the whirlwind brings upon us judgment. Now, in God's commentary, he asks Job 77 questions. And I know some of you are going to think, wow, that's pretty significant because 7 is the number of completeness. It is God's number. Here he's asking 77 questions. The lesson today can be divided really into 3 sections. First of all, God is making a point that he created everything. Wisdom is his. Power is his, and he used both wisdom and power in his creation. Number 2, God is making the point that he cares for everything. He's the one that looks after the birds and makes sure that they get food. He's the one that helps the deer give birth in the wilderness when there's no one else around. God cares for everything. He is abundant in provision and resources. Number 3, he makes a point to say, I can tell the monsters of the world what to do. The monsters being the most fiercest creatures, the biggest creatures. We'll see him talk about what we believe to be the hippopotamus and possibly the crocodile. All right. So, God asks Job a question, and the first question is this: why are you using your ignorance to deny my providence? Would God ever say that about you? I know that I have given him cause to say that about me. Let me repeat the question again. Why are you in your ignorance thinking that I cannot provide and meet your needs? God's provision is providing all of our needs, and God's unseen activity and intervention in the world is holding everything together because he owns it all, he controls it all. Job was sincere towards God, and he thought he knew things. However, he was not responding to the Lord in a humble way, and he didn't acknowledge all that he didn't know about God. You know, knowledge of our own ignorance is the first step towards true wisdom. And I've given you an extra video today that is called The Awe Factor of God, and it's an extra video that you can watch on the website. I did not produce that video, I'm just sharing it with you, but it's a great way to see how magnificent the universe, the stars and the planets really is, and to think, wow, look how small we are compared to how awesome and magnificent the world is and how awesome and magnificent God must be if He created all this. So it's just, I think, 2 minutes, but it is amazing to see the vastness of the universe. So I invite you to do that. Now, in this reading today, God gives us some examples of things that He has done. Number 1, He has set the limit of the seas. God tells the sun to rise. Number 2. Number 3, did you know He keeps in heaven storehouses of snow and hail? That's verse 22, 23. He tells the lightning when to flash. He controls the movement of the stars, verse 31. He can count the clouds, in verse 37. He teaches the birds where to find food, verse 41. And speaks about the deer, caring for them as they give birth to their young in 39, verse 2. I think it's funny to notice one of the animals that he mentions is the ostrich. Do you know a lot about the ostrich? In 39:13, he talks about the ostrich, and if you're kind of wondering, well, why in the world does he do that? God brings up the ostrich to make a point that God can create magnificent things, and God, in His wisdom and in His decision, can also create very strange animals. The ostrich is a bird that God made that cannot fly, but the ostrich can run faster than a horse. Did you know that? The ostrich can run up to 40 miles an hour. Wow. I mean, there is no limit to God's wisdom, His sense of humor, His ability to create the irony in all of that. I mean, that's pretty funny to make a bird that can't fly but that can run faster than a horse. Wow, that's something. So I just wanted to share that with you. And as we close up the lesson today, let's look at Job's response. What does Job respond? How would you respond if God is saying this to you? What are you thinking right now as you are just thinking about the magnificence of the Lord? In Job 40, verse 4, Job says, I am nothing. How could I ever answer you? I will cover my mouth with my hand. And I think that is saying to us today that until we come to a place where we can be silent before the Lord, putting all things out of our mind and just being receptive with a receptive and humble heart to hear Him and to listen to Him, He can't help us. He can't speak to us because we put up those blockades. How important it is to sit in awe of the majesty and the power of our God, and how nature all around us speaks, cries out to His greatness, to speak to us in His greatness. And I'll leave you with this thought. Job in this whole book has asked to speak twice to God. He did it in chapter 10 verse 2 and chapter 23 verse 4. Did you notice that God twice invites him into discussion? God twice invites him in response to Job's request to speak to God. He invites him to come. And God does that in 38:3 and 47. How true is that of God today, that every time we want to speak to God, He is there. Every time we want to talk to Him, He will listen, for He always wants for us to be a part of His life, and He wants to hear everything and be in complete dialogue and be in communion with us every minute of the day. We serve an awesome God, and we serve a loving God who desires relationship with us. Well, I pray that this lesson has been a blessing to you today. Thank you so much for spending time with me. You don't want to miss tomorrow's lesson because God has more to say, and tomorrow we're going to wrap up the whole book of Job. Have a great day. Shalom, everybody. Blessings to you. See you tomorrow.